Alright, welcome back. So in this video, we are going to see some further thing of rendering the HTML pages. Like we had seen how to render the pages, and that's all that you need to know for now. But like we are going to see how you can use some actual JavaScript things inside your HTML or the EJS file, right? And this is the video in which you'll get the actual use of EJS in good detail, right? Like, I mean, you will get the point of why we are using EJS instead of HTML when all the syntax that we're writing inside of it essentially remains the same, right? So, all right, so let's start with that. And first thing, what we're going to see is how you can add conditionals or loops inside of your EJS file, right? And this is basically the use that you can put conditionals and loops and all the other JavaScript things. So let's just start with that. Of course, you're still just rendering test. You don't have to make any changes here. The only thing we have to do is make changes here so that we can incorporate our if statements, right? Great. So let's say I'm printing this, and so for that, first I'll tell you how you can pass things into the EJS file, right? So let's say you have some variable here and you want to pass that in to this variable, right? So how do you actually do that? So what we can do is we can alright, so we can declare a variable, let's say 3. So so this is a syntax that I'm showing you here, this let, right? So var x is equal to 3 is basically declaring a variable which has value 3, right? But in ES6 syntax, you write let inside of var, and then x is something which is a variable, and you can change its value. Everything else remains the same. You just call this x. You make this with let, right? And then let's say you want to pass this variable x inside of this EJS file, right? So how do you access that? How do you do that? You can put a comma in here. You can then put these curly braces, and this will be an object inside which you can pass things to put in your EJS file. What I mean by that is you can do value x. So what will happen in this is that a variable named value will be created inside EJS which will have the value of x. So basically, if you want to access this x inside of test.ejs, you can use value variable, right? And this could be named anything, of course. This could also be named x, which is what you'll see most of the times. These two will be named the same, but for now, I'll call it value. Great. So now we have a variable inside this EJS file, which is known as value, which is the value of x, right? And to use that, I can simply use this. So these are EJS syntaxes, right? These are EJS brackets, and these are basically EJS brackets, right? You can have a opening angular bracket, a percentage sign, then a percentage sign, and a closing angular bracket. And everything you write in between of these can be normal JavaScript. You can write normal JavaScript inside these, right? So these can be of 3 types, like this, or just this, or this, right? So I'll tell you the difference as we move along, like when we use them, all 3 of these. This is basically to print a value, this is for logic, this is for rendering, and this is for logic. But of course, you wouldn't get that right now. So if you are putting an equal to in here and you write value, right? And now if you refresh, I see I get 3. So basically, this value is now a variable which you can access inside this EJS template, because if you just try to write value here and if you refresh this page, I get value, like the word value written here. So of course that's not what we wanted. We wanted to use the value of this variable, right? The number inside this variable is what we wanted to use. So we have to use these EJS brackets. And so the expression inside of this, so let's say this was value star 10, or let's say this was anything which was evaluating to something that we wanted to print. So value star 10 is evaluating to 30 that we need to print on our page. So in that case, you would put an equal to here, right? So I'll tell you the use of these three as we move along. For now, you can see the use of equals, right? And in this video, you will see the use of nothing too, right? If you don't put anything, what will happen? And this dash we'll see later, right? So if you do this, then this expression will be evaluated and its value will be substituted inside this HTML document, right? So whatever you write in here is evaluated and it is done, and then it returns something to you, and that is substituted in place of this whole line. And that is how, if you inspect this page right now, yeah. So in the body, we have 30 written here, right? We don't have the thing that we wrote there because that was evaluated, that was substituted in its place, and that was put here, right? Great. So this is how you could pass a value to your file, right? And now that you have this, I can actually show you the conditionals first, right? So let's say I want to make a conditional that if the value that I'm passing to this is greater than 5, I need to print greater than 5, otherwise I need to print less than 5, right? How do I do that? So you can simply do that by doing an if condition. And again, if condition is JavaScript, so you put it inside this EJS tags, right? And then as this is some logic, right? If statement is not going to like return anything to you. It is a part of a logic that if this is happening, then do this. So it is not an exact value that you have to substitute here. So you will not put the equal to sign here. You will not put anything, right? What you can do is you can do if value. So now we are already inside of these brackets. So you can do this. So if value greater than 5, and then you put a opening brace, right? And of course, for an opening brace, you also need a closing brace. So I'll do closing bracket, right? So now everything I write between this is between an if statement, right? So I can do, I can print a paragraph saying value is greater than 5. Great. And similarly, I could I'll just make this less than 5 now, or this will remain the same. I can pass in 6 here, so we can see this working. And if I refresh, I see value is greater than 5. But if I return this value to 3 and I save and I refresh again, I see I'm not getting anything. Why? Because this condition was not satisfied, and hence everything between these two things was not executed, right? Similarly, you could put an else if here. Like, the best thing about EJS now is that everything you're doing is simple JavaScript that you know, except you have to like make very minor changes of putting it between these EJS tags, right? And you can't just use anything without these brackets. You have to put brackets everywhere, but that is not a really complex thing, right? Putting brackets is not complex. You can do whatever you want inside them, which is great. So I can do now else if value equals 5, and then I put a bracket, then I need its closing bracket, so I'll do this, right? And I can do paragraph. So once you are not inside the EJS brackets, you are inside the HTML document, so you can write normal HTML. The only thing is, if you are writing some HTML between these two brackets, then that HTML will be a part of the logic, right? So if this was a for loop, this HTML would be printed n number of times. I'll show you the for loop in this video itself. So yeah, so we have else if value equals 5. We are then printing value is 5, and then I'll make another else, put a bracket, I'll close the bracket thing, and then I'll do paragraph, right? So I'll do the paragraph, and the paragraph will say value is less than 5, right? So now we are seeing currently the value is 3. So let's refresh the page. Value is less than 5. Excellent. Now I change the value to 5. Let's refresh the page. Value is 5. Excellent. And now I'll make it 10, which is already tested. Greater than 5 was already tested, but we'll do it again. I get value is greater than 10, right? So you see how this is working. Value is greater than 5, sorry. Yeah. So you see how this is working, right? We are putting if statements, and we always had the brackets, but this time the only difference is that in between the brackets, we don't have any more JavaScript. We have HTML. That is part of the logic. And the brackets are in EJS syntax, and everything between these two EJS tags is included in this one if statement, right? Alright. So now this is fine, and what I can do now is I'll print the number, the value that I've got 10 times, right? For that, I'll need a for loop, right? I'm doing something 10 times, so I'll do it a for loop. So I'll make another EJS tags. And again, for loop is part of a logic, right? It is not a value that is to be evaluated. For loop is not a value, right? So you don't need the equal to sign here, right? So now I'll do for where I equals 0, I is less than 10 plus I. I go in here, I enter my brackets, and I'll also need my closing brackets here. Always I prefer to put the closing brackets in first, and the reason behind that is that, you know, when you are writing something like this, now in the VS Code that we were using, something like this happened always, that the closing brackets were put by default and then you press enter, and hence you never faced a problem with the closing brackets. But in this you are putting them in a really weird way, of course. So there is a huge chance of making an error, and you know, like let's say you have a really complex thing after this for, and then you forget to put this. So that will give you an error, and EJS will be expecting a closing bracket. You will not give a closing bracket, and that will give you huge errors on your page, and then you'll spend hours, probably if it's a really complex code, you'll spend hours figuring out where you left your bracket, right? So it's always better to put these brackets first and then put everything inside of them that you need, right? Great. So then in here I'm going to make 5 paragraphs, which will say, yeah, right. So now inside this I can put another EJS tag, right? Because I want to print my value. So my value is a JavaScript variable, and that can be accessed only with the EJS tags. Remember, JavaScript is always inside EJS tags. You can't put JavaScript in HTML, right? So that is it. And so I'll write value plus we are evaluating something inside of this, so we will need an equal to sign. Great. So now if I go here, I see my value is printed 10 times, and we have already checked the if condition thing. So you can see how this worked, and I have now 10 paragraphs in here, and all of them have a value of 10, right? Great. And you could also do value plus I. So now if I refresh, I'll get 10, 11, 12, 13 until 19. So you see how I am like now I'm writing normal JavaScript logic and JavaScript code inside an HTML file. And JavaScript plus HTML plus CSS all combined can make something really great, and we know that. And so this EJS will now help us with the front end a lot. Why? Because you're using JavaScript and the CSS and HTML. I'm again saying the same thing. And you have the JavaScript on the back end too. So now with this, you can like make anything you want, because you have seen how to pass data. And like this is the way in which you will be passing data in the most complex things too, right? Because like you will, let's say you are printing some list of blogs out on your page, right, which are stored in your database. So of course you don't know how a database works, so this might be a little difficult to understand, so you can ignore if you don't get it. But what you will do is, inside this route, you can just understand the logic in the English version. Don't try to think of the code, that will become really hectic for now. So database will be like a separate portion of the code, of course. separate portion of the course, right? So inside this route, you'll like get the data from the database, and then you'll like kind of store it in an array, and then you can pass that array to this EJS thing, and inside you can loop over that array and print it, right? Great. And I just noticed the thing that this should be const. We are not changing its value, right? But you saw the let syntax, and that is useful if you are actually changing things, right? Great. So yeah, that was how you will pass data first. Second, you will use if conditions like this, right? Third, you can use for loops like this. And this is probably enough information to get you started with any page with some amount of routes, right? So right now, with the amount of knowledge you have, and you just need to see one more thing, how we can add like custom style sheets in JavaScript, which we'll see really soon. And once you have done that, you can make really good dynamic sites that do not use a database. Database is the next step, right? Great. So yeah, so that's it basically for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.